My time at NSLC, Georgetown, and Columbia. This is the International Diplomacy Program, and this was me getting to my room. My roommate had actually already gotten there, and I ran into her on the way there. So I ended up just looking around. It was really nice, and I set all my stuff up. I practically moved in with blankets and sheets and everything, and all my clothes hung up. And then I waited for the opening ceremony. This event was professional, so I ended up wearing my suit, and I went to dinner with a bunch of the girls on my floor. After that, we made our way over to the opening ceremony, and the room was actually gorgeous. Like, it was insane. But they introduced all of our TAs and the instructors for other programs that were there as well. Afterwards, we headed over to our TA meetings, which basically is like our camp counselor of the program, and he kind of introduced himself to us. And then we made our way back. And at this point, it was already like 9 or 10 o'clock, so everyone was definitely ready to get to bed. So as soon as we got back, I got ready and went to sleep. The next day was also professional attire, so I just wore flats and a dress, and I went to the dining hall for breakfast and just sat with the girls I'd met. And then after, I headed to my room to grab my water bottle because I forgot it. And I also had to pack up whatever I needed for a bus trip that was coming up because we were going to the State Department. This was going to be our first bus trip out of so many. One thing they don't tell you really about NSLC is that everyone has different amounts of free time based on your program. So when you're looking into it, make sure you're looking at your specific program. All of us meeting at the patio so we can all walk over to the bus together. Honestly, bus trips were my favorite because you always got to sit with someone new and meet someone new, which was perfect coming into this. So we got there and we were able to take photos, and honestly, it was so cool just sitting there in that room. Also given a diplomatic situation which we had to solve all together, which was really cool. Then we went to the Swiss embassy and we were given a presentation about Switzerland, which was really interesting as well. And then after that, we headed back to our rooms. I changed into casual wear and had a few minutes of rest before we had to go to our next event, which was a lecture by Dr. Craig, which was such an interesting class. And then we had our UN simulation beginnings and then world simulation. The next day was business casual. So I just wore some slacks and a top and then sandals, and we headed to get breakfast. The two options you get staying at Georgetown for breakfast is either Starbucks or the dining hall. So most of the time we ended up going to the dining hall because the Starbucks line was so long. But plus I got the gluten-free breakfast as someone who doesn't need gluten-free food and regretted it drastically. Then we had opening statements from Model UN, and it was actually really fun, but obviously a little scary. But anyways, after that I headed back to my room and got ready for our bus trip again so that we could go to the Red Cross. We were given a tour and kind of told the entire history of Red Cross, which was really interesting, especially how it was so female dominated in a time where that really wasn't common. And then this is me trying to look all nonchalant in front of the stand, and it just did not work. After the tour, we headed back to our bus and we headed to the Korean Cultural Center, which is a branch of the Korean Embassy. They had a lot of collectibles, which I literally loved, and then we got a presentation on the pop culture of South Korea. After that, we headed back to campus, and I rushed over to get some Chick-fil-A, and the line was absolutely insane. And then we had another lecture by Dr. Craig, which I hadn't mentioned before, but he is a professor at the National War College. Then we had dietics, which I am not going to tell you about because it's a surprise for most members. I had some free time to walk around, so my friends did all sort of things. We kind of ran around campus and explored.
My Doja Cat.
Honestly, a really fun part of this time because I think this was the longest free time we had gotten on the Georgetown campus. But anyways, after heading back for our check, we went to bed, and the next morning we had a college panel. We were able to ask our TAs any questions about their college experience, so we kind of got a first-hand explanation of going into the pathway that we wanted to go into. And we headed over to the Smithsonian's, and we got to choose any museum that we wanted in the boundaries. So I chose the National African American History Museum, and no amount of photos could show you how amazing it was. But anyways, the weather was really bad, so we basically had to run back in the rain. Then we had World Sims. This is our pledge to our country, and then we got on the bus again for Washington at night. We basically got like a bit of free time for each monument and were able to kind of roam around and take photos. And it was honestly so fun and a perfect way to end our experience in DC because this was like the second to last night. It was even funnier because my friend actually got locked in the bathroom and we all had to leave her. After that, we headed back and went to sleep. But the next day was business casual, and we had basically a TA pop quiz diplomacy game, and it was basically TA versus TA. But then after that, we went to the National Museum of American Diplomacy, which was so cool to be in. And then we had another diplomatic simulation where I was a Society Against Labor Endangerment, and then after that, we had a resolution writing class back at campus. That was for UN. And then finally, it was time to start packing up. My suitcase was really big. I don't recommend, but I was able to get everything in there. It was just a little difficult and really heavy. Afterwards, my friends and I went out to campus to take photos and kind of explore for our last official day being at Georgetown. Then we had our last leadership series and we had to do a speech in front of everyone, which I wasn't really able to record all the time, but we did have multiple of those classes throughout the time. Next day, we grabbed all our stuff and headed out. But just other things that I missed was more UN simulations, more world simulations, and then lectures with Dr. Craig and a lecture with Dr. Christie, and then also multiple leadership classes with B-Love, or actually Brandon Love. Then we headed to breakfast, but today was going to be like a non-stop, well actually one stop, but 4-hour drive to New York City. So all of us were like, let's get food immediately. Today they actually had a really good breakfast. Anyways, we got on the bus, and it started off with, like, talking to everyone, then everyone started going to sleep, so I started reading, and then after that, we stopped at Delaware and grabbed food. After this stop, we were all heading directly to a ferry to go to Ellis Island, so we wouldn't get to the Columbia dorms for the first time until, like, 6 p.m. I'd been to New York City, but only once, and I'd never been to Ellis Island. So I think a lot of us were really excited to get there, to the point where people were playing music as we got closer to the city and actually could see the skyline. My friends and I really had fun with this, like, accent oracle where it could guess where you're from. So I recommend that for the bus trip if anyone wants to try. Anyways, we finally got off the bus, and we basically walked to the ferry from there. We weren't in New York City just yet, but you could tell everyone was super excited. And then also getting on the ferry, everyone was just, like, walking all the way to the back so that they could see the skyline. And going in here ties international diplomacy because this is how we allowed immigrants and how we allow the diversification of culture, and that encouraged international diplomacy inside of our country. So getting there, it was actually really cool and obviously very interesting to see everything that occurred getting into Ellis Island. And some of us tried to trace some of our family's records back to any entrances into Ellis Island, but I could not find anything. So when you do come here, make sure to ask your parents for, like, names beforehand. Oh, and the way back was so wobbly. Anyways, we finally got to Columbia, and you actually aren't restricted to be on campus like everywhere else. So that was actually really cool. Basically, there's, like, boundaries, obviously, from the hall that we're staying in, but we were able to walk to Shake Shack and eat there. And then I came to my dorm for the first time. Most people got singles, but a few people did get roommates. But it was really cool because there's just a wall separating, so you have a lot of privacy from your roommate. And just to note, it's going to be a different person than your original roommate. But honestly, I thought the dorms were so nice at Columbia. And plus, it took a lot less time, like, moving into the dorm because we know we're only going to be here for, like, 2 full days. So I recommend, like, packing one of your little bags with all the stuff you want to bring into Columbia so you don't have to open up your suitcase. This is how it ended up looking in there. So obviously, I didn't pack it up the way I did originally for other stuff. We had a TA meeting, but after that, I studied my ASL class. Also something to note, because we always got back around, like, 9:30 so we could get back for RA check. So if you need that time to study or you want to read or alone time, like, you will get that from that time. The thing I do want to mention is that Columbia does have communal bathrooms. And I can't speak for the guys' experience, but half the time the shower wouldn't stop, or it'd be too hot or too cold, or you would notice, like, there's hair on the walls or in the drains. Like, it was definitely not sanitary, and so just definitely bring shower shoes. I mean, bring shower shoes regardless, but, like, definitely consider that. Honestly, it wasn't, like, a deal breaker for me, but it definitely made me think, like, oh, like, I couldn't stay in these dorms if I was a student here. Like, I couldn't do that for a whole semester. Anyways, I woke up at, like, 7 a.m. so I could make the 8 a.m. meeting to go get breakfast with our TA. We don't have to do that all the time, but for the dining hall for the first day, that's what you do. But you are allowed to go somewhere else if you'd like. as long as you go in a group of 3. But the dining hall was actually so nice, and the campus was really nice too. It was so old vibes, but also like New York City. And the dining hall did not have AC, but still like they had great food, and had a lot of fans. Also, for any Hamilton fans, there is a Hamilton statue and building there. My friends and I actually went to go take pictures with it because you do have some free time after you eat breakfast to kind of walk around, but not a huge amount because it was time to be ready for the United Nations. For a lot of us, this was like a highlight from our trip because if you want to go to international diplomacy, you've at least thought about the UN pathway at least once. But it was just so cool being in those headquarters, having the visitors pass, seeing like all the sculptures and gifts from other countries. We had a tour guide, and he worked for the UN, and so he showed us around the Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm in love with. The Security Council, we got to see some of the human rights that they established. We got to walk through meetings in progress, which was so cool. The Security Council, this is me in front of the UN symbol, and then after that, we were given 2 hours and like 40 or something of free time in Times Square. As long as we were within the boundaries and with our friends, we were able to go anywhere we wanted in those boundaries with our friends. So of course we went to the main central Times Square area, but we just walked around a lot. We went to the M&M store, and then we went to get ice cream. Wow, that was fast. After Times Square, we went to the Columbia bookstore to grab all the merchandise. We definitely had to like sneak in some time basically because it definitely was not like aligned into schedule. So whenever you see a gap in time, grab your friends and go. But the Columbia bookstore is actually really cool, and it was an actual Barnes & Noble bookstore. I hate when the colleges say that and there's something like that, but I was between these sweatshirts. I got the white one in the end. These were really cute. And then after that, we got on the bus again. And this time we were heading to a sunset cruise. But basically, this was every program that was at Columbia, all piled into one event. So, I mean, it wasn't like cramped or anything. There's a lot of space, but it was definitely a little bit chaotic. But it was a good way to like end our experience. It was fun. You got to meet people from different programs, and obviously it was so pretty seeing the city in all different times. Obviously, we got to see the Statue of Liberty just before July 4th. That's the time that we did it, which was really cool as well. After that, we did our last roll call in the bus. But we don't do our names. It's based off of what you and your TA decide. Like some did countries, we did brand names. So if you'd like to hear, here it is. Anyways, after that, I grabbed some water from the vending machine, and then I think I headed right back to my room. I was so tired. That day was so busy, but honestly, it was the last night, so I started to wrap things up and kind of say, like, small goodbyes to everybody before the next day when we would all check out. If you guys want to do this program, I definitely recommend.